Today I would like to show you how I adjust a Marvin multi-slide door for better operation. So let's get started. One of the first things I like to do is to check to make sure that these screws up here are not over tightened. Oftentimes the installer will put a screw through this like they're supposed to, and they will over tighten it and it'll cause the whole frame to bend. So you can get a little block or make a little block like this. I made it for 2.5 inches. So it fits nice and snug in here. So you'll know if the screw is too tight that you won't be able to slide this. So I'll take this, go through here, and as you can see, this one, I can't get it in there all the way. So I'm gonna go ahead and loosen that screw. I'll just take a hand screwdriver and just make sure it's not over tight. I'm not sure if you heard that little cracking, but you can hear how much tension was on that screw. And now I should be able to take this block and now easily slide it through here. So I'm going to go through and check each screw to make sure they're not over tightened. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my little block that I cut at 2.5 inches. I'm just going to go all the way down to make sure it fits. Feels really good. So the next thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm either going to take a vacuum or I'm going to take a blower and blow out all this sheetrock dust that's usually in here during construction or after construction. Do the same thing over here. For those of you who watch most of my videos know that Pledge is my #3 most used tool. And this will probably be the only time I'll ever tell you to spray this directly on a product. Usually I always tell you to spray it on a paper towel first. Well, this time we want to make sure that we get all this mole hair weather stripping along in here clean, and we wanted to break the friction. So let's go ahead and do that. I'll go ahead and I'll take my fingers and I'll rub it in this mole hair to make sure it gets in there. And then on this bulb weather stripping here, I'll go ahead and take my paper towel, spray some on it, and then I'll wipe that all down. Okay, now we'll go ahead and do the rest of the frame. Okay, I'll spray some on this little mole hair weather stripping too. Then I'll spray some on a paper towel. I'll wipe this weather stripping down here, that's bulb weather stripping, and then this mole hair here. I'm gonna go ahead and just wipe all this down. Be sure to go ahead and do this side as well. Mole hair weather stripping here, we'll spray some on there directly. Of course, do all this after it's been painted and stained. You do not want to spray this directly on wood, or you could contaminate your wood and your product will not take paint or stain. Just a warning. And we'll go ahead and do the locking jam. Now I'd like to show you how to adjust the wheels or rollers on this door. On this multi-slide door, they use a progressive roller, meaning that every time you turn the screw, it does not click. Usually on a traditional door, you hear click, click, click. This is progressive. So as you keep turning it, it goes in or out. So you can really fine tune these doors. Hopefully you can see on this door that I'm looking between the two doors how the gap here is really tight, and as the door goes up, it gets bigger. We need to level that. So since these doors come in multiple configurations, you're going to want to start with the furthest one in the pocket or the first stationary panel that's on this door. One way to do that is to adjust the first panel to make sure that this is lined up. Or another easy way is to use a laser level. Not sure if you can see my laser here, but you can see how I got the beam to where it's barely splitting between this stop and this glass. So on your furthest pocket, you can adjust that door first and then do the next one after that. So this one, we'll go ahead and take the plugs off. Now you cannot just stick a screwdriver in these doors and start turning them. These are so heavy, you can actually strip out or break this roller if you force it too hard. So you're either going to have to use a glass cup and have someone help lift as you do the adjustment, or if you don't have a glass cup available to you, use something to protect the seal of the door, and you can use a little pry bar to help relieve the stress on the wheel. So you can actually put your pry bar in there, you can lift the door up as you're adjusting it. We'll go ahead and adjust the wheel, and we can see How that is, I'm going to use my little pry bar in here to help relieve some of the tension on the door. I'm going to lift up on the door as I turn this down. And hopefully you can see how that gap is now almost dead perfect. Now we'll check the operation. That slides real nice. Now that you adjusted all the panels in your multi-panel configuration, and this one it's only 2 obviously, as we can see here, our laser level is consistent on both panels. Now when you get to the last panel has to be absolutely perfect to this jamb. And the reason why this has to be absolutely perfect is for this lock to work. It's got this little safety button that does not allow you to lock the door in the open position. So this button has to be pressed in all the way in order for it to lock. So we need to make sure that this is perfectly straight. Not sure if you can perfectly see this, but it looks like we're a little tight down there. We're still just a hair too big up there. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this wheel and adjust it down. Some little pry bar to relieve the pressure. Go down a little bit. Okay, let's give that a try. I say that works pretty good. Go ahead and put our roller adjustment plugs on them. And if you lose these, I believe they're just a 1/2-inch plug. Oftentimes I'll go to Home Depot in the tool bin and they have these there, and I'll pick some up. So if your door is not closing all the way, or your hardware is not locking because this little button's not being pressed in all the way, I want to show you a few other things to make sure that your door locks properly. As before, where I showed you at the top where the screws could be a little too tight, and I show you this little block in here, the same thing can happen here. So oftentimes your installer will put a long screw in these strikes. You can do the same thing and just make sure that they're not over tight, like this one. You just want to make sure they're snug. We'll check that on all of them. So you could also check the distance between here to make sure that it's not over tight. Now, let's say your house is completely finished, stucco, trim, you've done everything you can, and you still can't get that to open up. Now, I would not recommend this. I have done it a few times. I'm fortunate enough to be here in California where we don't have really extreme weather. I have removed this weather stripping here to allow this door to close all the way. That is not a factory recommended thing. They would recommend that you keep all your weather stripping on your door, but if you're in that pinch and you can't get this door to lock, sometimes you got to exhort to extreme measures. Of course, I don't recommend it. So also, let's say that everything's finished and you have a reverse hourglass shape to your frame and you can't move that frame over, and this button still will not press in. Well, you could do something obvious like put a little rubber bumper or a little dot right in the spot of it so it presses that button in, or I'm going to show you something else you can do. So if you have a case where a little button is not acceptable, we could take this block of wood out and shim it out. So first, let's go ahead and remove the weather stripping, flat putty knife, and just work your way all the way down. Set that to the side. Go ahead and take this weather stripping out. Go ahead and take the screws out of the strike plate. Go ahead and remove this strike plate. We'll go ahead and remove this screw at the top, and we got a screw at the bottom. Okay, now we can remove this wood block. Comes out relatively easy, just like that. So now that you have this removed, you can actually go ahead and put a shim behind it, which looks like someone did here, which I didn't even know was here, but that is what you can do to help that so that lock engages. And also, I've only seen this a couple of times. It's extremely rare, but I've had where this seemed like it wasn't in the proper spot for the lock to go in. I've actually had to remove this and actually cut off 1/8 of an inch so I can move this over in the pocket to get the hardware to line up. I've only seen it twice. I know it's extremely rare, but since I got it off, I thought I would mention it to you. So if you got a lock that's not locking too well, don't be afraid to shave a little off this to move this over if you have to get the line up with that hardware properly. So now that we got this shimmed, we're gonna go ahead and put it back together. Now I'd like to show you how to remove this panel and also help prevent some of that breakaway force. The breakaway force is that initial pulling when you open the door. I want to show you how to reduce that, and I want to show you what these are for. So obviously these doors come in different sizes and they're rather large, so you may want to have a partner help you with this. But this is maybe one of 3 doors that I could think of that you actually can lift the door up and out. The multi-slide, the lift and slide, and I think are all the Ultrex glider are the only ones you can lift up and out. Everything else, as the time of this video Marvin makes, there's a top track that needs to be removed in order to get this out. So this one, we'll go ahead and just lift it up and out. Go straight down. Now that we got this panel out, if you ever had to replace these interlocks, obviously this is how you would do it. This one, there's a little screw at the top and bottom, and this cap comes off, and there's some screws behind it. But to help prevent that breakaway force, again, my number 3 tool, some pledge and a paper towel. Spray it on the paper towel this time. We're going to go ahead and wipe down this interlock. We're going to do both sides. Obviously, we want to make sure everything's painted and stained. Go in front and behind it. And do this interlock. And we also want to make sure that this weather stripping back here is pushed in. Even from the factory, every once in a while, I see one of these that isn't pushed in all the way. So go ahead and take this paper towel, fold it in there, and just go all the way up and down. Since I got this door out, I'll go ahead and we'll do the bottom of this as well. And then here, because that weather stripping rides on this bottom piece here. And if you ever had to replace the rollers, this would be the time to do it. Take off this metal plate here, top and bottom, and this whole cap comes out, and then you could replace that wheel if you need to. So these actually go up here to help protect this weather stripping from getting torn up like it is right here. So hopefully you can see this groove right up here. This little connecting barb goes in it like this. And then when we take the panel, we can slide it over this to get it in there, and then we can remove those. We obviously make sure the panel is on this side so the interlock clears the other one. Just like that. And then we'll go ahead and remove these. Now, if you ever have to replace the lock on this, it's relatively simple. Just take off the handle. So there's 2 screws. Comes right out. When removing the hardware, be sure to take up the Phillips head screws. Do not take out these screws here. These stay in there, so don't force those ones out. And just remove the screws. Throw the hardware and take it out just like that. Now that you've got this hardware removed, now would be a good time to go ahead and lube it up and spray some Tri-Flow, some kind of lubricant on it to help it operate a little nicer. If this is brand new hardware and you're replacing defective hardware, just make sure you press the little button in, press that up so this pivots out like that and goes back in there just like that. Okay, when putting the handle back on, make sure that this little lever here goes in these 2 little slots here. Make sure everything's hooked up. There you go. Well, there you have it. That's how I adjust a Marvin multi-slide door for better operation. And if you found this video informative, please consider hitting the subscribe button below. Thank you for watching and have a great day.